Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Tower podcast. Of course, I am Andrew, and I'll be bringing you this week's midweek follow up, reflections, reactions, whatever makes the most sense to you. Of course, this episode or this midweek follow up will be to our part one episode on the Corinthian cycle. It was an episode I really enjoyed. I learned a lot more about the Corinthian cycle than I knew previously, and I know Aaron enjoyed it as well. And so far, from most of what we heard, is people have enjoyed it. They've appreciated hearing this kind of focus on the prophecies that we've started here. And we're looking forward to continuing the series. Of course, this coming Friday, which, if I can look at the calendar, is the 7th of December, part 2 on the Corinthian cycle will be posting for your listening pleasure and enjoyment. We've got a tweet here from Twitter user Bookworm200, one of our regular commentators. Love always hearing from any of you guys. Starting to recognize some consistent names, which we definitely appreciate. So Bookworm has said, I'm enjoying this so much. What blew my mind is when you mentioned that the Corinthian cycle had been written before the breaking. Now why do I always mess up pronunciation? Ishmael, his words to lose Theron, makes sense about him rejecting the name dragon. That was something that, I guess I always kind of figured when I was reading the actual book series, but there's nothing that directly says it. It's implied and everything whenever you look at, when you're looking at the actual books, and they include the blurbs. I think it's generally after the prologue. I'm looking at a book right now, so you can probably hear the papers flapping around. They include passages there. You've got like in the Eye of the World, when you look past the prologue for Dragonmount, it talks about from a specific work, on the Breaking of the World, Unknown Arthur, the Fourth Age, and you get the same thing from another work, The Cycle of the Dragon, Author Unknown, the Fourth Age, and generally most of the books they have some hint in there with titles of royalty or prominence or something to that effect that we don't recognize from the series as we know it. But it's not just that the Corinthian cycle was written before the breaking of the world. Part of it was, we're not sure which parts were and weren't written before the breaking of the world, but some were written before, some during, and some after. I think the main text of it was written before the breaking of the world because Robert Jordan has said that the majority of it would have originally been in the old tongue, specifically high chant, and over 300 pages written down. I think what we're seeing is more like the the translated works. Maybe it was really translated during and after the breaking of the world, but I believe that it could still be assembled before and during the breaking of the world, and probably after the breaking of the world. It was probably more likely a lot of translations, like a parallel to the original Christian Bible being in Hebrew, at least the Old Testament section, and then over history it was translated into different languages, different versions. So something like that is pretty much what. Sorry, excuse me. Was pretty much the way I think about it. My reason for believing that it was still written through the breaking of the world is that I believe I think it was inspired by a lot of like foretelling style talents from different individuals throughout history. Um, there's no real reason to believe that the ability to have foretellings is only linked to the use of the one power. We see the White Tower reference a lot of these things as just talents. Min has a talent that we don't really know an in-depth name for, but we know it's not necessarily connected to the one power. The same thing with Perrin, having his bond with the wolves. And I think that dreamers and people that have the foretelling and the like work much in the same way. So it's not outrageous to believe that different parts of the Corinthian cycle were foretold by different people with the talent for foretelling, and were assembled over time, before, during, and even after the breaking of the world into its current status, which obviously we as the readers are not given the 100% full version of the Corinthian cycle, just by virtue of Robert Jordan's words himself. We don't have 300 pages of old tongue high chant, or anything. We kind of have the meat and potatoes, like an almost synopsis of the overall Corinthian cycle, which, I mean, it's fine for me. I would be interested to see the entire work. Be really awesome to find out that if Robert Jordan had written that down somewhere and had it available for us or not. I'm kind of guessing probably not, but it still would be great to see, just so we could see more in depth. But I imagine we'd have a lot of references to places we don't know about from the series and people we don't know. But I think the current version gives us enough. But yeah, I found that very interesting too, that that this work isn't just something that popped up after the breaking of the world. It wasn't just something that nobody thought about until after all the male channelers had gone mad, and the counter stroke by the Dark One upon being resealed by Luz Theron. But yeah, so the part where Bookworm here is talking about Ishamael, his words to Lewis Theron about him rejecting the name Dragon. Of course, that comes from the prologue in the Eye of the World, entitled Dragonmount. And I'm going to read the paragraph, because this is a dialogue paragraph where Ishamael is talking to Luz Theron, and he says, so you do remember some things. Yes, betrayer of hope. So have men named me, just as they named you Dragon, but unlike you, I embrace the name. They gave me the name to revile me, but I will yet make them kneel and worship it. What will you do with your name? After this day, men will call you Kinslayer. What will you do with that? And, of course, Luz Theron doesn't really respond to that. He hasn't been partially healed from his madness by Ishamael at that point. But I do think it does help make more sense. Ishamael, makes comments about, like, right after he heals Lewis Theron enough to realize what's going on. And Lewis Theron is going on a tirade against him about, so Lewis Theron, makes the comment about, he says, 10 years, betrayer. 10 years your foul master has racked the world, and now this I will, talking about Ileana, sorry, being dead. He believes, obviously at this point, that Ishamael is the one that did it. And Ishamael retorts with 10 years, you pitiful fool. This war has not lasted 10 years, but since the beginning of time. You and I have fought 1,000 battles with the turning of the wheel, 1,000 times 1,000, and we will fight until time dies and the shadow is triumphant. So it's definitely reasonable to believe that Ishamael has seen a lot of this Corinthian cycle come about. And I think it does help us make sense of, some of his comments to Luz Theron. Because Ishamael has pretty much mentally been the same person through all of his reincarnations. Um, his mentality has kind of been preserved by his attachment to the Dark One. From the way I read the series and what I gather. So, but the dragons is not necessarily. There's been an unknown number of dragons. We don't know who the first one was. I've made the comment in other podcasts that because of the way time works, I don't think you can say there is a first dragon. But there's there's theories out there that the dragons are kind of an amalgamation of their last potentially 3 to 4 lives when they're reincarnated, and whatever portion of that personality is strongest, might be some a voice in their head to give them guidance, as we see with Rand and Luce Theron. With no real way to really know for certain. We do know for a fact that, like, Luce Theron is a voice inside of Rand's head. That Robert Jordan has confirmed that there's no real weird time paradox going on there, where Luce Theron is hearing Rand while he's alive in the second age, and Rand's hearing him in the third age. Robert Jordan did clarify that kind of stuff for us, but yeah, it does make that a little bit clearer as to why he would say Luce Theron is rejecting the name Dragon, which he won't have. He's still known as the Dragon, because he's the one remembered by those in the third age now, which is like, I think, some 3,000 years later or something of that sort. And there might also be a Ish. I'm so tongue twisted. I'll get this right one day. Ishmael. I don't know why that's so hard to say. Like, I know how to say it, and I keep getting tongue twisted on it. But I think he could also be hallmarking too, whenever the dragon is reborn, how they generally will refuse the name and say they're not the dragon, which we see Ishmael as Baalzamon dealing with Rand, trying to say that he is the dragon, and Rand's like, no, I'm not. I deny you, father of lies, and things of that nature. So I think it could very well be kind of a hallmark back to that inevitability that, we're going to continue to fight thousands upon thousands of times, until time dies. So, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you learned something new, something that you found interesting. Of course, we always love when that happens, myself and Aaron. And we want to encourage discussion about that. But that was the one real comment that I could see. I tried to go back through everything on Twitter, and notifications would only let me go through the third. But I'd been keeping an eye out in between whenever part 1 came out and now. That's about all I saw. I haven't seen anything on Gmail or anything, and I just checked a few moments ago before I started recording this for you guys. But so that pretty much ties up for that. I do have some more stuff to kind of react to. So the first one is going to be from our friend Renegade there. Shout out again to you, good sir. So Renegade said, I'm really looking forward to the meeting of the minds. Black Tower's no holds barred, go anywhere spoilers mixed with White Tower's enthusiasm and insights. This is going to be more fun than turning a badger loose on the green. Hashtag adventures in Andor. And we're so stoked too. Like, we literally cannot wait for this. As I'm recording this, we've got about just over a week or so, about a week and a half before we're going to get to work on recording this kind of joint episode for you guys. So, we're trying to get everything geared up for that. We've got a running collection of some of the questions we've gotten, things like this. We'll be sure to mention to the ladies at the White Tower. Typically, they see a lot of this stuff already, and they'll like the tweet anyway. So don't feel upset if we don't specifically mention this. We don't know exactly a timeline necessarily for it, but when I say timeline, I mean it's not really scripted out. Yeah, we're not gonna like write a whole script and try to follow a script or anything, but it's gonna be dope. I'm super excited. We've been in good communication with Jen and Jess, getting everything squared away, working on a date, working on a time, and I know they've reached out to their fans, which I know we have some overlap with our fans here at the Black Tower and the White Tower podcast fans. I don't know they're getting questions and stuff to the people have either asked them or asked us. I know I saw a new question pop up today that I've got copied over into it, and we've got a handful of questions right now. Not a huge amount, but definitely a more than workable amount as far as I'm concerned, and I believe Aaron would agree. So, but again, remember we've set the deadline for questions to be December 14th. Everything, whether you tweet it to us or the White Tower Podcast, email us or the White Tower Podcast, put it on YouTube, put it on Facebook, on our YouTube channel for the Black Tower Podcast, the Facebook group for the Black Tower Podcast. Again, our email is blacktowerpod@gmail.com. And our Twitter, of course, is at Tower Podcast. And we pay pretty good attention to all of that. Aaron was on Twitter so much today that his phone apparently died twice. So we're definitely keeping our eyes out, and we'll be redoubling, keeping our eyes out on stuff as the days count down to this, where we host the White Tower for this joint episode. It's going to be dope. I'm really looking forward to it. So the last thing I've got here for a midweek follow-up. So we were kind of watching across Twitter as we do. You know, we follow guys like WT Pod through and those guys. And there was a tweet out from Twitter user Haral Luan, at Haral Luan. I'm not going to spell it out. Just because I don't want anybody going in. We're not ratting or dogging on any one person. It's just, you know, thought-provoking, some of the stuff we see. So there was initially, this Twitter user made a comment to WT Pod through, correcting some pronunciation about Aes Sedai and Egwene. We tweeted back the GIF image of Hermione Granger from the Harry Potter series, you know, doing the whole "it's not Leviosa, it's Leviosa" kind of thing. And so Haraluan's response was, "LOL, knew that was coming. I felt the same way about some of your guys' pronunciations, but forgot what they were before I could tweet it to you. Sorry, just a little anal about it, I guess. It was always the first thing that came up when I talked to other fans. Pronunciation." So I'm gonna read here what Aaron's thoughts on it are. So Aaron says, Robert Jordan was a cruel writer when it comes to names. Everyone needs to take a breath and calm down over the pronunciation stuff. The Wheel of Time community has a reputation for being friendly towards new readers, and Aaron feels like harping on pronunciation isn't the way to be welcoming. I fully agree. It's one thing to correct someone's pronunciation. It's another thing to harp on it and make that a focus. You know, you don't want to put people down, especially new readers, because it's almost like learning a kind of second-ish language. These are not common pronunciations for most of your native English speakers, even though it does use the English alphabet. But still, we're not used to these kind of pairings of words and pronunciations. So I think it's the wrong thing for the community to focus on. People that listen to the audiobooks obviously have a leg up. People that study the glossary and practice have a leg up on that as far as accuracy. I know Robert Jordan had a a habit for correcting pronunciation stuff, which is his prerogative as the author, as the writer of the series. I mean, he knew how to pronounce everything because he wrote it. And I don't see anything where him correcting pronunciation was done in a way to kind of like, demean anybody. And I'm not saying this tweet was meant in that way, but it does highlight a point that I think we as a community have to be aware of, that it's so easy for us to be so absorbed in our love for the series that in our desire for things to be correct and honor the series and the memory of Robert Jordan along with it, that we run the risk of turning new readers and new fans of the series away from, if not the series, at least away from the community by how we react to these kind of instances. So for me, obviously I have a lot of issues with pronunciation things here and there. I make no secret of it. I think we make a reference to it in almost every single podcast we do. The thing is, we are making an effort. I know the other podcasts are making an effort to pronunciate things correctly in terms of how they were written by Robert Jordan. But I don't think it's right for that to be a focus of criticism, to be fair, because they're not necessarily always the easiest words to pronounce, to figure out. I can go and look at a pronunciation, go right back to the word, say it 2 or 3 times, and then the 4th time I go to say it, I've forgotten exactly how to pronounce it. So we get the desire to make things correct, to say things the correct way. If we didn't want to do the same thing, we wouldn't try to make sure our pronunciation was correct. We wouldn't question our pronunciation, that kind of stuff. Again, it's not going to personally bother me if you say like, "Hey guys, this word is pronounced this way." But it's all about in how you do it and the verbiage you use. If all we see are like, if it's the same person every time just tweeting, and they're like, every time it's just a correction on pronunciation, like it's going to get old, and we're like, okay, yeah, we get it. We acknowledge that we have issues pronouncing some of the words, but that we're not perfect. I know sometimes everybody has those things that can kind of derail them or distract them from things, or things that are just kind of, pet peeves or so for them. As Haral Luan has said here, some people are a little anal about different things, which is fine. Like, we're not putting it down. I think it's fantastic that the pronunciations and you've got them down packed. Just be cognizant of the fact that, the rest of the community maybe doesn't. Keep that in mind in the way that you address it, is the way we feel here. And it's fine to offer that help to people, but, just make sure you're doing it in a constructive, kind of a supportive way, rather than a, "Hey man, this, you're not doing this right, and how dare you," kind of thing. Which, again, I'm not saying that's what happened here, because from what I see, I don't think that was necessarily the intention. I think this was Haralo on, trying to be helpful to the WOT Pod Through guys. But sometimes when we record these podcasts, different ones of us from across the podcast, maybe we're tired. Maybe it's been a long day. Maybe we're distracted. I have days where I can barely apparently speak English. And it could be some of those things where, like, I've gotten it right a couple of times, or I just looked at it and then somehow I've already forgotten it because it's not a common word that I use. Just make sure that we're being a supportive community. We all love the same series, the same author, the same works from Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. And so far, the community seems to be doing very well together. I love what I see on Twitter with the fan-made character accounts, the other podcasts, the kind of news Twitters for the Wheel of Time. Obviously, Rafe Judkins and Sarah and all of those, which, of course, shout out to you, Sarah, of course. We're liking the dance party thing. It's always a lot of fun to see all the different gifts people throw up. But it's a fantastic community that I think we can all enjoy for sure. And we just need to be I think a better supportive community, or not be a better, but continue to be. Because so far I've seen pretty much nothing but good stuff, and good discussions and everything. So, but I'm not gonna harp on any of this any longer. That was pretty much all I had to say for this week. After the last podcast that came out, again, don't forget, if you have questions for us, questions for the White Tower podcast, Jen and Jess over there, and of course Aaron and myself over here at the Black Tower podcast. If you have theories or questions about the series, as long as the questions for us are appropriate, and of course we'll go through those, and we'll mediate that from our side, or mitigate that from our side as much as we can. Make sure you get them to us however you can. You can tweet them to us at Tower Podcast. You can email them to us at blacktowerpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Black Tower Podcast, and the same name on YouTube. Feel free to post comments on any of those, on all of those, whatever you want to do. You can also direct message us on Twitter, and we will answer you on there as well. Or at least we'll take it into something that we can, maybe in this midweek thing, we'll get back to you on it or address it in one of these. So, but yeah, get your questions in. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to have a couple drinks and plenty of laughs with the White Tower gals. Super stoked. Hope you guys are as well. Keep your eyes out. The part 2 of the Corinthian Cycle podcast will be coming out this Friday, which is the 7th of December. So from us here at the Black Tower, this has been Andrew with your midweek follow-up, and look forward to talking with you guys later.